I'm here with Linda Brown, filmmaker. Your film, You See Me. Wonderful, wonderful documentary. How difficult was it to make?
It's kind of like life. You just live it. It was a challenge. I needed to give myself permission to ask the difficult questions without knowing what the answers were going to be, but with the faith that the information would lead to a better place.
Because the documentary is about the journey of your family. That was all on video. Your father recorded everything, and leading up to basically towards the end of his life.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I have so much archival footage in the film, and it spans so many years. It started out with 8mm film, and then it ended with amateur formats of video. But the interesting thing is there was so much less material when it was film, because it was precious, and there was, you know, you had your 3 minutes, you packaged it off, you sent it to Rochester, it was processed, and you came back and you looked at it, and it was very dear. So I knew that footage quite well. But when video came in and we could shoot, the joke is that we didn't spend time even looking at what we shot. You record more footage than you even ever spend the time looking at. So while I knew the film footage quite well, I didn't know the video footage. And of course I was an adult at that time and I wasn't living with my parents. But I think that is one of the deficits of having so much video footage, that it doesn't hold value because it's not precious anymore. But it certainly, in this case, in the way my father used it in the film, was kind of used it almost like a confessional. And that was very interesting. I didn't know that when we weren't there, my mother wasn't there, that he would pull out the video camera and have these recordings. I don't know if he did it beyond the stuff that I have in the film, or I just was lucky enough to find that footage. But to use it in that way is a very interesting approach.
And you're talking about the testimonials when he would be alone, because you have family footage of, you know, being out on vacation stuff, and then there's parts where he's sitting alone, literally talking to the family. Was that difficult to watch as well?
Well, I had worked on the film. It was mixed feelings. There was a sense of, when I was watching it for the first time, what is he going to say? There was a fearfulness that I had, anticipation, and then when I heard what I needed to hear, there was this kind of like sigh of release. You know, like this. Yes, he did want to say all these things to us. He did have those feelings that we all felt, but he just couldn't express. And to finally, then, it was a gift for him to validate it in that way. I mean, the sad part was that he felt he couldn't do it in real life. You know, we had to do it through this medium, but at least I found it. And for me, the big thing was to share that with my mother, to really share that footage with her.
What I enjoyed about the film was it was his journey, you know, filmmaking, catching, you know, memories, and, you know, talking about, you know, memories. It seemed like he wanted to hold on to memories, that he was taking footage, and it was, you know, precious to him because, like you mentioned, you know, how difficult it was to you know, create film, and here it is. All these memories. Do you think it was something that he wanted to remember and not forget, to have a visual for it?
I think because of his background, that the sense of family was really important. I think that was, I mean, I always had that sense that it is really important to bring a family into the world, to work as a family unit, to support each other as a family. So yes, I think he thought those things were very important. I think that doing things, going on vacations, creating memories, was what he saw one of the big functions of a family. That's what that was about. And then, unfortunately, then because he carried so much baggage because of his history, exactly what he thought was so important is exactly what he had a hard time connecting with and being present with a lot of the time. So they're very bittersweet to look. That footage for me is very bittersweet because I can see both now. When I was younger, I couldn't see all those layers in it, but I can see them now. When I have the knowledge that I have now and I look back at the footage, it's all in those images.
Do you think it was his way to convey that he was present, that he loved his family, that, look, I was here and I did want, to be a part of, your upbringing?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, in the film, I asked my sister Sue, did you feel loved? And she said he knew every one of us. He knew our strengths and weaknesses. And I said, how do you know that? And she just stops and pauses and thinks and goes, I don't know how to answer that. So yes, I think, and I've talked with all my siblings, we all felt deeply loved in spite of his inability to really express it and other emotional things that impacted his ability to connect with us. Just obstacles for him that I think he dearly wanted to be able to get past, but he just didn't have the skills, the emotional skills to get past them.
Do you think the footage, the video, was a way she knew that he loved you guys? Because here he is, documenting the family. She answered, I don't know how I know he loved us, but here's all this footage and about everything he did. Do you think that was one way she might have known?
That could be one way. I also think the other thing was that he knew specifics. He could identify things that were like idiosyncratic about each of us. Like in the footage, it's not all in the film because the film would be many hours long, but he tells little stories about each of us that are very representational of our personalities. And when each of us, because I made copies of all the long version of his kind of testimonial confession, and each of us said, "Yep, he nailed me. That story he told is very much me," And so that's what I think that we were able to get. Like, even though it felt like he was busy and he was working and was the dad and he had all these hours away from us, he did know each of us. And what our little personalities were really like, and he could tell a story that would represent that. That made us feel like, he gets me, he knows me.
Because You See Me is from a statement he says at the end of the film, or, in footage that we see at the end of the film. Because the entire film is not only about him looking at his life through film, but how he interacts with his family and how you are wanting to find out more about him. Tell me about that process. What in you thought, because this is a second film. Right. You had started another film which you use footage in this film in regards to that. What prodded you to use film to try to get him to talk or, find out more about him and his feelings towards the family?
I didn't know it at the time, but I'm a very visual learner. I'm a cinematographer by trade. And so I think that I was able to gain knowledge of the world through images. And so when we had these little reels of Super 8 film or 8mm film, after the family looked at him and we were going to put the projector away, I would ask my dad, teach me how to thread the projector. And I would look at this footage over and over. And so I think it was my way of understanding, because I was not a reader. I was not a good reader, and I had problems reading. I had issues learning how to read. So I think it was my way of learning about the world, of how I navigated through the world was through imagery. And he liked gadgets. He was mechanical. His job was a pattern maker, and so it was very much a visual world that he worked in. And I may have inherited that from him, but it was just very natural for me to go toward the home movies and the videos because I liked mechanical things, and then I could share it in those learning that way through the footage is really what happened.
Do you think because he he took footage that by filming him would give him an opportunity to open up. Did you approach it that way? What was your approach when you were talking with him?
Well, in the first film, in Your Favorite, when I started to ask these emotional questions about, like, I'm your favorite. Oh, he would deny it. You're not my favorite. Why couldn't you be closer with us? And he couldn't answer those things. I truly think he didn't know. I also think, he was younger, and I think whatever issues and that he had that prevented him from really being closer with us. When you're young and consumed with your work and I think those things were always in him on some level. But I think when he was young and healthy and vibrant, he was able to keep those on a lower level, to keep them on a subconscious level where I don't have to deal with those. I don't have time. I'm busy. I got a business to worry about. I think what happened is when I came back and asked those same questions when he had his stroke, and I saw it as an opportunity to, well, at first I thought, well, I'll just record his recovery, and then he didn't recover. But the time then that I was spending with my parents, I thought, I'm going to go back and ask those questions that I asked before. Now, I was more mature. I was more capable of handling whatever the answers were. Because I was asking some pretty loaded questions. I think maybe the first time around, I wasn't emotionally equipped to really dig into whatever I was going to hear. And maybe we all sensed it, so we kept it at a certain level. And for me, that early film never paid off. I didn't get things answered that I didn't get those questions answered. And I think this time around, he's older. I knew in my heart, I don't have much time left to ask him these. If I don't get these questions answered this time around, I'm not going to get an opportunity. And I think once he started to get physically ill, I think he was not able to hold down all those fears that he had, and he then started to want to maybe answer some of those questions as best as he was able to answer them. Although, he I think he knew answers, and obviously when we see this footage where he's by himself, he knows what we wanted to hear from him. Just wasn't capable of doing it when he was younger, and we were present.
Is that the film? You cover so much. You brought in some footage from your first film. You brought in footage, family archival footage, and then his recovery. In all that, do you think because he didn't seem like he'd be embarrassed because he was in front of the camera, but do you think he was emotionally embarrassed? That's why he couldn't say what he could on the film that you ended up finding?
Yeah. Although I took a lot of this out. Yes, I think you're absolutely right about that. I think it's just like, I'm the man, we're not going to go there. If I start to go there, I don't know what's going to happen. I might lose it, I might cry. I'm the father, I'm the man, I shouldn't do that kind of stuff. So I think, sure, there were all those fears. But interestingly enough, I did not keep a lot of this part of the footage in the film, which is that he was embarrassed for me to film him post-stroke, what he looked like physically. He often said to me, you should turn, well, I think I have it in once where he says, you shouldn't be filming me like this. I think he was embarrassed to be seen physically frail and weak, both emotionally and physically. That's not Dad's role. That's not the man's role. When I think back, and that's a great question, because I think, did I ever see my father cry? And I did see my father cry in front of me one time, and it was when my mother had a miscarriage and they lost a child. And it scared me. I was young, and it was like, oh my God, whatever is happening is really bad because Dad doesn't cry. So there's that sense of, we all prop up those beliefs then, he can't cry. If he does, then there's something really bad. And so we get accustomed to seeing each other and having those expectations of each other, play those roles.
As I was watching the film, he seemed very much the man of his time. We were talking about that. Like you were saying, he's big and strong and so on and so forth. What was going through your mind, especially those last 18 months? We can imagine what was going through your mind. What were you feeling? Like you were saying, you wanted to ask those questions. Did you feel satisfied? Did you get some answers, or was it really not until you saw the archival footage?
No, I pretty much, until I saw the archival footage, I pretty much thought I didn't get it this time either. And even in the film, I say, well, the ending might be the same as last time. Maybe the answer for me is to stop asking. I mean, that was something that I entertained. Maybe this asking is like, maybe you just accept what it is, And I even say, maybe I could be more like my mother and accept things. Maybe I should just move on. But there was something that still gnawed at me that thought, you still want to know. Stubborn is the nice word is persistent. The euphemism is just stubborn. And I just kept thinking, no, there's something out there. You just keep wanting to know. Because I felt really connected with my father. And it's like, I know you feel all these things. I just need to hear you admit it. Yeah. So that's really what drove me. I think we don't know, unless we really know what we come from, we may not know who we are. And I think that was part for me, like, I need to know who I am. I need to know what I've come from. I need to understand this legacy.
Amazing. Just one last question. Because, at this point, I see, two journeys here. One for the film, and for you in the film, and then one for you emotionally, What are those? Have you given thought to those journeys? What are those like at this point?
That is such a great question. I pretty much thought that when the film was finished and I released it to the world, I would put like a stamp on it and that would be done. And some people relate to the film and other people don't. And so it brought up in me a lot of things about, whoa, are you rejecting me? Are you saying my journey isn't valid? And so I still feel very vulnerable about that. And I think that I unknowingly chose this project to keep me unsure, to keep me questioning, to keep me vulnerable, to make it be okay that it's like somebody goes, I'm not interested. And for me to say, I want to have conversations about things that we normally don't talk about, and if you don't want to hear it, that's okay by me. I'm all right with that. And really be okay with it. And then say, but anybody who does want to talk about this, let's start talking about these kinds of things, about family relationships and family dynamics. And, in the film I talk about domestic violence that went on in my home, and I talk about realizing that my father probably was chronically depressed most of his life, and it went undiagnosed and untreated. And I carry some of that with me, and I dealing with my own issues of being mentally healthy. And so it is, I can't put the stamp on it. Even if I would want to, the ongoing process, it just continues. It's just a continuation of it. But I'm sure somewhere inside me, unknowingly, I chose it because it would present that challenge to me. I guess I'm just endlessly curious that way, and I just want to keep growing. And this film, and the release of this film, and the conversations around this film, gives me that opportunity.
Fantastic. Linda, I just want to tell you, going through it, I feel like I know your family, your brothers and your brothers and sisters, and it seems like it's a true American family journey. And I think it's wonderful. I think it's going to open tons of doors and questions for everybody to have conversations. And I think it's just wonderful, fantastic film. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much. You had great questions and made this very interesting for me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.